Welcome to Learning to Glow, a show about wellness, skin health, and self-development. I'm your host, Jess. I'm a mom, entrepreneur, and skincare expert. I'm so excited to share tips on how to achieve healthy skin and bring amazing guests in the field of health, fitness, aging gracefully, and personal growth. Let's explore all different ways we can take care of ourselves as women, both inside and out, to truly shine. So let's get glowing. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Learning to Glow podcast. I'm your host, Jess, and thank you so much for being here today. I am so excited to share our guests with you. We have Dr. Prudence Hall. She is with the Hall Center in Santa Monica. Dr. Hall started as a traditional gynecological surgeon and transitioned her career to focus on regenerative and integrated medicine. As the founder of the Hall Center in Santa Monica, California, she saw a critical need to address the problems confronting women and men experiencing the stubborn and often debilitating symptoms associated with aging. Her practice is focused exclusively on regenerative medicine, looking into the root cause of conditions and diseases rather than simply treating symptoms. She strives to help clients achieve optimal health and actively prevent disease without the use of pharmaceutical drugs when appropriate. We talked about so much in this episode. We talked all about perimenopause and hormones. She shared why it is important to treat her patients with a holistic approach, how postpartum hormones can lead to terrible sleep, weight gain, depression, anxiety, and what to do about that. Perimenopause is a topic I haven't heard much about, and there's so much we can do to help with these symptoms that we feel during this time. She gives some amazing tips for what to look for and ask for when you see your doctor and how important it is to be your own advocate. Dr. Hall is the most lovely woman who truly cares about helping women feel vibrant. It's so clear how passionate she is. You'll know when you listen to this episode. It was an honor speaking with her, and I know you are going to love her as much as I do. Check out Dr. Hall's information in my show notes, where you can find her, and also she has an amazing range of supplements. I'm definitely going to be trying out for myself. I'm getting the adrenal support and thyroid supplements, so definitely check all that out. She was so wonderful, and I'm so grateful she was able to come on and share all this good information with us. And here is Dr. Hall. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Learning to Glow podcast. I'm your host, Jess. I'm so thrilled to have Dr. Hall with us today. Dr. Hall, welcome. Thank you for being here today.
Oh, it is such a pleasure to talk to your audience.
I'm so excited. They are in for such a treat today to talk to you. And before we begin, you are a medical doctor. You have your own practice, the Hall Center in Santa Monica. And I would love if you could just tell us a little bit about that and what you do and who you serve. That would be great.
Well, I'm delighted to. So I did my gynecology residency in obstetrics and gynecology, and I took care of some of the poorest and really most needy women of Los Angeles during that 4-year period. And when I went into private practice, it's like, I'm ready. I know it. I can save lives and be in service. And then I started right away starting to see my menopausal patients and perimenopausal patients, and they didn't get better. I mean, everybody else got better. They didn't get better. And they would come to me crying, saying, Prudence, please help us. We can't sleep. We're mean. We're crying all the time. We hate our husbands or our partners. We're yelling at our kids. I keep forgetting what I'm supposed to be doing at work. I mean, really terrible symptoms of menopause that we're not resolving with the treatment that, frankly, is still taught today. When I talk to gynecologists, very little has changed. So I went on really it's been 3.5 decades now since I took on this menopause problem. And I found lots of solutions and just I've grown so much, especially I would say in the first 3 years of tackling this. And I bought bioidentical hormones from Europe where I actually lived a lot of my life in Europe. And everything changed. Women got well. They were smiling. They were, so grateful. And I don't want anyone to not know about menopause. And I consider it kind of a very dark part of women's lives that never ends unless we treat it. So how you handle menopause is important. It affects the rest of your life.
I love that. I love that so much. And I think especially because we're not really told about what to expect and what the symptoms are, and it can be so confusing, especially if you don't know anything about it. And I know that from looking into what you do, you treat a little bit differently than the typical doctor. You are more of a holistic practitioner in that way. Why would you say that's important, first of all, to be looking
Mm.
at it in that holistic way?
Oh, such a good question, because we're holistic. As humans, we have a biological age, and that's really how is our physiology, how are our numbers, how is our vitality, our brain, our heart, the things that really can impact us in terms of shortening our lifespan. And then secondly, we're very emotional beings. I mean, to try to treat somebody, or to say, yep, you're going to die and that's it. I mean, not addressing any of the emotional strength we have to actually come through horrific situations, and not to help heal the trauma that we have, because trauma leads to a lot of illness, Jess, as you well know. And then we're spiritual beings, we're energetic beings, and our connection to source, the energy that flows through us, is extremely important. And I love functional medicine. I started functional medicine probably 20 years ago with Jeff Bland. He's the father of functional medicine. Bless him. He's alive and well. But really, looking at the core root causes of problems. So if the tree is dying, you don't paint the leaves green. You fertilize, you take off the bugs, you water, you see what's wrong with the plant. And then from the roots up, you correct the beauty of the tree and the health of the tree. So I approach health that way, using naturopathic medicine and my traditional Western medicine. And I refer widely to energetic healers. And, I think that all of this is important in terms of really regaining the radiance that is our birthright.
Oh, your patients are so lucky,
Oh,
really, to have that sort of that view of everything, and that's why you're seeing such great results too. And it's not the norm, so they are very lucky to have you.
oh,
I thought one of the things that we could talk about today, because I feel like everyone's interested in learning about hormones, especially, as we were talking a little bit before we started recording, many of my listeners are women in their 40s, a lot of
me too.
women in their 40s, maybe 30, late 30s and 50s.
Mhm,
And one thing that I don't hear talked about very much, and we've never broken this down on my podcast, is perimenopause.
mhm.
And I was wondering if you could maybe explain to us what that is to start, and then maybe, how do you help your clients, your
Beautiful.
patients? But maybe start with,
Beautiful.
like, what is perimenopause? When can we expect to see some of these symptoms?
Well, we see these symptoms in our 30s. And women come to me all the time saying, Prudence, like at 37, I have more PMS. So that would be a big red flag. Rather than having a day or two of feeling kind of off, frequently it is 10 days or 7 days of worsening PMS. Also, the menstrual cycles, can become a day or two closer together. That is absolutely a symptom of perimenopause. And women tell me, I just don't feel much vitality. I feel something is happening in my body. I saw my gynecologist, I saw another gynecologist. Everybody said it's okay. And I'm so happy you're really addressing this with me, because perimenopause is missed, scandalously missed. I mean, doctors will do a little tiny bit of lab work and then say you're fine. And then women are put on antidepressants. They're put on Adderall, or medications to focus their brain, because depression, anxiety, irritability, things like brain fog, ADHD, all of this really starts to unfold in our mid 30s. Now, some women don't feel the decline in estrogen, and that's what perimenopause is. Rather than being up here at a level that's where we're 20 or early 30s, it's just a little bit less. And frequently, I measure hormones for every woman before I see her at every visit. But frequently, these new patients who come in at, let's say, 36 or 37, very typical. I'm glad you said that you too are seeing them at this age. So they'll tell me, I have these symptoms, but my lab work is normal. And it's like, well, lab work has to be kind of matched to where you are in your menstrual cycle. So, for example, I'm thinking about actually a new patient I saw probably 2 weeks ago, and I see perimenopausal women all the time. And she told me she had all the symptoms. I'm sleepless. I actually have night sweats as my period is approaching. I have 10 days of PMS. I'm not myself. I've gained 5, 6 pounds. This is unacceptable. And I feel like my life is falling apart. But so these are menopausal symptoms. And sometimes what I found in perimenopause is that the symptoms are actually more extreme in perimenopause than they are in menopause,
Oh,
because
wow.
sometimes we have good hormones, maybe the first, around ovulation we might have estrogen levels that are 300, which is a robust good level. But then on either side of ovulation, and ovulation is right in the middle of the cycle around day 12, 13, or 14 of the cycle, when you consider that day one of your cycle is the first day of your day one of your period is the first day of the cycle. So, we have these good hormones and then we don't. As we approach our period, we don't. And during our period, we don't. And then the symptoms start to get better because the menstrual cycle is kind of like that. And so I look and it's like, wow, you're on day 21, your estradiol level is 60. This is extremely low for a woman for that part of her menstrual cycle. It should be 175, 200. And I've learned that the follicle stimulating hormone, which is a brain hormone that I follow, can frequently be barely elevated. So the higher that FSH is, the more towards menopause women are. So these values, to measure these values, are extremely important. So a normal follicle stimulating hormone is 3 to 5. And in these perimenopausal patients, sometimes they'll be 6. It's like, we got our diagnosis. Your symptoms, we got our diagnosis, low estrogen, slightly elevated FSH, and then I treat them.
So that's something that you know right away when you see that test result. What are ways that you treat this?
So I treat on many different levels. Menopause and perimenopause is not just a collapse of the ovarian hormones. It's also a decline in the thyroid, which is right here in the neck, and the adrenal hormones, which are two little glands that sit right back here on our kidneys. It's a decline in a lot of the brain hormones, which are important. And then I look at the sugar. So in perimenopause and menopause, sugar cravings are enormous because our sugars and insulins go up. So it's kind of like this: lower estrogen, lower in perimenopause, absent in menopause in terms of the estrogen. And what goes up? Our sugar levels, our inflammation levels. So we feel that our body hurts, stress. So that stress of perimenopause and menopause will start burning out our adrenal stress glands. So those are our fight and flight glands. And we a lot of different hormones fall. So I look at 12 different hormones, rebalance them all to youthful levels, regardless of the age of the woman. See, this is one of the problems, Jess. People say, oh, you're too young for this. No, we're not.
It's
We
so
can
incredible
continue.
how it's just affecting well, this affects this. I mean, it's like you said, that's why it's so important to treat holistically because it can affect so many things. And earlier you mentioned depression, and did you say anxiety was one of the
Oh,
symptoms?
huge anxiety happens in perimenopause.
And
Huge
so a lot of
anxiety, irritability. Yeah.
it's funny because I started having anxiety out of the blue in my
Mhm.
30s, and it was like intense. And I'm like, what is
Yeah.
happening? You think, my first reaction was like, "Oh, I just had kids, so I'm more anxious because I'm a mother." But
Mhm.
it makes sense because of all of the other things that are going on in the body. And then so a lot of MDs are going to be like, "Okay, well then you need an anti-anxiety or
Right.
antidepressant medication,"
I
without
see this.
like going to what you're saying is what they really need.
Yes, that is exactly true. So rather than actually identifying the core root cause of what's happening, we sort of treat the symptom. So you're anxious, let's give you an antidepressant, anti-anxiety medication. You're overweight, well, let's give you, I mean, I use all strategies for weight loss, but I make sure that the hormones are balanced before I start trying to suppress the appetite or do things like that. So you go to the core root cause. Now, interesting about you being anxious. How many months was it after the birth of your child that you started feeling anxious? Is that all right if I ask you these personal?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, I was 33 when I had my son, and I feel like around 35 was when I really noticed, like, I'm getting I'm more anxious. It's general anxiety, and also, like, the little things, little triggers make me anxious. So I felt I could have been back when after he was born right away, but I feel like once I hit 35, I was like, "Oh, I really feel a difference."
Yeah, that is so common. One thing I just like to tell your readers, because I've worked with this extensively, is postpartum depression and postpartum fatigue. So what a lot of doctors don't even know is that after you have a baby, your estradiol levels plummet. They're in the thousands when you're pregnant, and they go all the way down to as low as you can get, like 5. I measure women all the time who
Mm.
are postpartum. And so if you have a level of estradiol that's 5, and in your normal menstrual cycle it's around 150 to 250, then that's low estrogen. So women will come to me saying, I'm depressed. I just had this adorable baby. I'm depressed. I'm sad. I'm anxious. I can't lose my weight. Or maybe they lose some weight and then plateau and can't lose more. Or I just feel so tired and bad. Well, that's the time to replace women's hormones, because we don't want women to go into depression and such extreme fatigue that they can't function well. So that's a wonderful time to check women's hormones. I always say, look, give yourself about a month. Let's see how you're doing. Let's check your hormones at about a month. And nursing drives the estrogen down. So I nursed my kids for
Mm.
like 3 or 4 years. I was just like, my babies. you know. Thank God my neighbor said, in Africa, she was a social worker and worked a lot in Africa with her husband. She's in Africa, they nurse till 7. It's like, okay, I could nurse till they're 3 or 4. And they're all great, by the way.
I feel better.
They're all great.
Oh,
That's a plug
I
for
love
nursing
that.
again. Yeah.
I
But it
think
drops it drops the hormones. It drops the hormones.
that's such a good point, and something I never heard, to check so soon. It's like I've talked about this before, that postpartum period where you're just like doing the best you can. And I
Oh,
literally never was told, oh, maybe this is a good time to check and see how you are doing. We're so focused on the baby
yeah.
and making sure that we're getting, having everything put together and like just getting through it. But I mean, after a month, if you're struggling, like, why struggle? Go and get those levels checked.
Yeah, women tell me they can't get out of bed, and I understand that, having had 3 children. I mean, the fatigue can
Mm.
be enormous. Nursing, waking up in the middle of the night, and it can get to a point where it's pathological. Women come in and say, "Prudence, you're my last hope," and it's like, "What do you mean?"
Mm.
I mean, they tell me that in menopause, but what do you mean? You're 30, you're 36, or you're 31. I can't stand the depression. I can't stay here because I'm so depressed. Okay, we're going to fix it. And really, we can fix it. I generally use the patch for postpartum depression because I don't want any hormones to touch the precious baby. And it doesn't suppress the milk supply. I was taught that it did in my residency program. It doesn't. And it really is enough hormones so that women start to say, that's my baby. We're okay. We're going to go for a walk.
Aw.
Yeah, it's so sweet to see.
That's awesome. Aw, I love that. So, yes, that's such a hopeful message too, because it could feel tough. One of the things you had mentioned, and we're talking back to perimenopause, you had mentioned weight
Mm,
gain. And
mm,
I know this is a popular topic because this happens to so many women,
mhm.
and they've gained this weight. They can't take it off. They're doing everything right, in air quotes, right?
Right,
Like,
right.
I'm counting my calories, I'm doing this, I'm doing that, and just nothing's budging. So I'm sure you have clients that are complaining about this.
Yes, absolutely. So it depends a little bit where women are in their progression with hormonal decline, but always with perimenopause, with menopause, and there's no such thing as postmenopausal. We just stay in menopause for the rest of our life once we go into it. So that's a
Mhm.
that's a misnomer saying that we're through it. Yeah, we're through it and we feel like shit. Excuse the language, but we feel horrible. So I replace all the hormones to youthful levels. And that means the thyroid. I personally had 3 miscarriages during my having my 3 children. And this was at the very beginning of my career, Jess. I didn't know that thyroid
Mm.
could be borderline and not really look abnormal with the blood levels. I mean, I had the symptoms. And once I started being aware of that, I mean, I quickly replaced my hormones and I went ahead and had my 3rd child. But I didn't think I'd be able to with 3 miscarriages under my belt. And it was due to low thyroid. So you correct the thyroid, the adrenals, the ovarian hormones. You get people on an excellent diet. A lot of times I'll use naturopathic solutions. And my daughter, who's my in the Hall Center too, is wonderful for helping women prepare for pregnancy and making sure that their thyroid's excellent. She does a lot of that pre-pregnancy prep stuff.
Mm.
And, I do too, but I think that she's really good at it with all the naturopathic training that she has. So we replace the hormones. We get women eating a healthy diet, and that will help to lower the weight. Frequently, postpartum, women can't lose weight because with the birth of one baby, the thyroid frequently declines. And when the thyroid is low, right here, when the thyroid gland is low, we aren't going to lose weight. We definitely are
Mm.
not going to lose weight. Or if we lose weight, we're on a starvation diet, which eventually rebounds into more weight gain. So I correct all the hormones in lifestyle and with bioidentical natural hormones and lifestyle and herbal supplements too.
I love that. Yeah, I had no idea that the thyroid could affect the pregnancy. That is so interesting. I was actually diagnosed with hypothyroidism after having my kids. And I mean, before I had my thyroid medicine, there were days where I could not get off the couch. It was
Yeah.
crazy fatigue. That was my biggest symptom.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's like what that controls and what that affects is just so many things.
Yes, it absolutely does affect so many things. So, hormones are our body's software. So, we go to the computer, we're going to boot up the computer, we're going to ask questions and get information. And with flawed software, we have flawed results. And that's exactly what happens to our bodies. So, hormones will beat our heart, maintain our blood pressure, tell us when we're hungry and thirsty, tell us when we need to sleep. Every activity in the body is controlled by hormones. And enzymes are also very important in terms of how the body works. And, to really have a vibrant and healthy body, we want to be able to sleep 8 hours. Well, that's controlled by hormones.
Mm.
Perimenopausal women are waking up exhausted and, having very light sleep. Did that happen with you at all after the birth of your baby? Or,
Yes. Yes. I've always been a light sleeper, but the waking up in the middle of the night
yeah,
happened to me. And that I feel like it's gotten way better, but for me, I always felt like there's people like my husband, I feel like he can get away with less sleep. If I have less sleep, I feel like I'm sick. Like I get
yeah.
so fatigued and like I cannot function. So I need that sleep. It's so important to me.
It's very important. 8 hours is very important. And melatonin is a hormone that I measure along with human growth hormone. I measure those two. And, if somebody is listening, they can start with 5 milligrams of melatonin and take it about an hour before sleep. A lot of women tell me they can't fall asleep. So they're in bed, it's 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock, 1 o'clock. So definitely, take it an hour before you fall asleep if you're in that category, or if you're just waking up, if you can fall right asleep, but you wake up, you can take it right when you're brushing your teeth, when you're getting ready for bed. So start with 5, give that for about 5 days. If you can't sleep, you can go to 10 milligrams. I created a supplement called Sweet Sleep because I combined, and this is for all of you to listen to, GABA, very important for sleep. I put 500 milligrams in mine. 500 milligrams is a dose that our listeners can try, along with 5 to 10 milligrams of melatonin. 5-HTP is another ingredient that I put in Sweet Sleep, and it's you can get that over the counter. 100 milligrams of 5-HTP. So if melatonin alone doesn't work, you can take a little GABA, you can add a little 5-HTP. You're going to sleep. balance your hormones, you're going to sleep. It's
That sounds awesome. I've heard so many good things about GABA. That
mhm.
is, I hear it's just like a great relaxer. And yeah, I've heard that's because a lot of people, I think I heard this from a functional doctor who was talking about how a lot of women will drink wine and they want
Mm,
that to like kind of help relax them. And that could actually be messing up their sleep. And so I heard a doctor say, "Hey, try GABA instead, like of the wine that
yeah.
you're using in a way that might feel like it's helpful, but maybe not so much." When I first started my wellness journey, I had already been in the skincare industry for years, working on client skin and as an educator for multiple skincare brands. When I learned about how the toxins in our personal care and beauty products could have a negative impact on our health, I knew I needed to make a change. I was used to the result driven products that I was working with, and I was not happy with the natural products on the market at that time. Although they were safer and cleaner, they did not meet my expectations for results. I created Simply Just Skincare to deliver the results my clients demanded from their products while using natural, toxin free ingredients. You can check out my clients' results and reviews on my website, simplyjustskincare.com. In 30 days, my clients have reported more hydrated skin, less appearance of fine lines and wrinkles, and more of an overall glow. Our top sellers include our Repair Toner, our Hydrating Undo Serum with hyaluronic acid, and more. I am offering my listeners 20% off their first order with code PODCAST. Check it out in the link in my show notes to get glowing today.
That is beautiful. I've noticed that in myself. If I have a glass of wine, I can wake up. I sleep 9 hours, but certainly women tell me that it's very common. And you know what happens in perimenopause and menopause, Jess? Women start
What's
drinking
that?
more. They start drinking
Oh,
more. They feel like they're out of their minds. They feel depressed and irritable. I just need to relax. I need to relax. So I see a lot of women drinking a lot. And it's like, have you always had 4 glasses of wine a night? Oh, no. But that anxiety and that nervousness really can cause a lot of addictions. So treating your perimenopause and treating your menopause naturally is really important to prevent future, I would say, addictions or heartbreaks. I mean, they're really tough to deal with. I mean, we can deal with them, of course. I mean, one of the things I do is I use oxytocin when women are drinking more alcohol. It's like, look, oxytocin is a beautiful brain hormone, and it's the body's natural solution to addictions. So if you are drinking too much wine, take some oxytocin at night, put it under your tongue. There's not a single side effect to it. There really is not one side effect. If your adrenals are lower and really burned out, it could cause some fatigue. But generally, I'm correcting the adrenals, and I have sweet slip. I have super adrenal, which I correct the adrenals with women with. But once you correct the DHEA, pregnenolone, the cortisol, this is if you're really burned out and tired,
right.
then oxytocin. I mean, you just do not have much desire for alcohol. I mean,
That's
so it's a
amazing.
one.
And I feel like the alcohol, especially when you are dealing with your adrenals and your hormones are out of whack, it's
Yeah,
like not the greatest thing to do to be adding on to all the things that you've already got going. So having those more natural solutions, it's
yeah,
so important. And then I totally can see how the sleep, if you're so desperate and you can't fall asleep, that is like a painful thing. I've had it before where I had like a brief period of my life where I had a little bit of insomnia. I was traveling a lot.
yeah.
And I was like, there's nothing worse than having insomnia. It's like, it's very
Oh,
painful and it just is so frustrating and you're so exhausted, but you just can't sleep. So I love that
yeah.
you shared those options. Those are amazing.
Could we mention sexuality just a bit, because I just love to talk about women's sexuality. I think it's so important, and it's in on a spiritual level. I mean, it connects hearts in such an endearing way. Body, hearts, minds. It's a way of really coming close to divine union. And
Yes, please.
did you notice after the birth of your baby that the sex drive just disappeared for a few years?
Yeah, for sure.
So that's normal. That's normal
Okay.
because, first of all, there's
Yeah,
so much tactile stuff with the baby, um,
right.
but also it's hormonal. So the ovaries go into a sleep state. It's like your computer going to
Mm,
sleep. It goes to sleep, and our testosterone levels are very low. And the stress of a baby causes the adrenals to go low. And then our estradiol levels, which are the main ovarian hormone, really start to collapse. So what does that cause? Low sexuality. In fact, sometimes you just want to push the mate away. It's like, don't come near me, you know. So, and that's I think it's wonderful to maintain that beautiful energy when it's appropriate. And women tell me who have had a baby, and certainly in menopause and perimenopause, that the vagina becomes drier and that it's painful. And that's a symptom of low estrogen. So when hormones are brought back, either postpartum or during perimenopause or in menopause, to more youthful levels, and I use a lot of testosterone in women, they tell me, I haven't had a relationship. I'm just thinking about this morning, a patient I saw, Prudence, we're young lovers again. We used to,
Aw.
travel like roommates, and now we just are looking for a place to jump each other. And it's like, she said, we're so in love. We had just lost contact with each other. We just, Amanda was saying and she's 60. And she said, I never thought that I would really be wanting this happens to be her husband, but my husband like this, because we had been on hiatus for 10 years. And he just kind of was very respectful of me and just kind of backed away. And men lose testosterone too. So I deal with men with that too. But it's lovely. It's lovely to be aware of where's the mind, where's the body, where's the heart, where are we at, who
Yeah,
are
and
we?
I feel like that's another no one ever talked to me about any of that in those times, and I don't think it's something that the more mainstream doctors really talk about, and I think maybe people are too embarrassed to bring it up or talk
Right.
about it. But I hear it too. I've heard it, in friends, and it's a shame because there are things you can do. Like you said, there's so many things that we can do if we I think you have to know what to ask for if you don't have somebody like you to kind of help along with that, because otherwise you don't have to be struggling like that.
That is so true. And I think discussing sex with women, I discuss sex a lot with young girls. How do you want to use your body? Why are you here for?
Right.
What do you want to create? I mean, having some experience before marriage, I think is a good idea, but you have to be careful in terms of how often is the heart going to be broken. Um,
Right.
yeah, but so I'm really in favor of women having great orgasms, being confident of themselves. That's testosterone. Testosterone causes great confidence in ourselves, in our sexuality, and being able to be, well, vocal about who we are. Expressive is a better word about who we are. And I encourage you to share your sexual problems or your sexual wonders. I'm not sure if this is okay. Is this okay? I mean, the questions I get are fantastic. And it's just like, young women, you powerful, you beautiful, you you wise women. I wasn't that way when I was younger. I would have been too afraid to talk about sex, I think.
Well, that
So,
shows a lot of how comfortable they feel working with you, that they're able to ask those questions and
well,
maybe not be they may not have any other place to go to with that. So it's so important to have someone, a doctor that you can talk to about that.
I love sex education. I used to do some of the sex education at my kids' schools. And I mean, things were said like, well, we go into the bathroom and give guys head. And it's like, okay, so what does that do for you? Well, popularity, maybe. I mean, just the questions that come up. And well, everybody's doing it. So I sort of feel like I have to do it. It's like, okay, so let's talk about what are your values? Who are you? What are you creating in your life? What are you committed to? And, young people can be very committed to beautiful values. And we're all different. So we all have different values. And, I love hearing about people's different values.
That is incredible that you did that at your children's schools. Like what a gift to those children that you were able to come and do that. That's amazing.
I was honored to be invited. It was my
Uh,
honor. I love giving back. And it was just a very small way to kind of help because I think we need directions. we do need teachers. And I think back on the teachers that I've had so many brilliant, wonderful teachers who have guided me. And like you're doing, Jess, you're guiding people. You're mature. You've had so many experiences that people haven't had yet, in sharing that and supporting people who are going through similar things. I mean, I think I've gone through everything.
Yeah.
Almost. Almost. So,
Yeah, it's fun, isn't it? It's fun to share what you learn, and that's why I have this podcast. Because people like you can come on and teach me too. I'll always be learning. I think it's so important. So, as far as the women who are in this perimenopausal stage, what are some tips that you have for them? Say they're really relating to the things that you're talking about, the symptoms, and they're like, "Oh my gosh, like that is me. I'm
yeah,
having these things." I go for my annual once a year and I'm not really,
yeah,
and I can tell, from experience, the last time I had an annual exam, I wrote all of these things that I wanted to talk about and on the questionnaire, and I know people are going to relate to this, but I wrote all of these things down. There were some real issues that I had, some real serious symptoms that I wanted to talk about. And we did our exam, and then she didn't mention anything, and then she was out the
yeah,
door.
yeah,
And I
yeah.
was like, I'm done. I felt like I was on my own. And I think you have to keep fighting for, you have
Yes.
to know. You have to know
Yeah.
what you need to ask for, and you need to find the right person to share it with you. But if somebody's in that situation like I was, but they're feeling symptoms and they're not getting the help that they need, what
Mhm.
would you recommend?
So, first of all, we need to be our advocates. Doctors
Mhm.
in traditional medicine are very stressed, and they have a lot of, I would say, time constraints placed on them. Like they have to see 30 patients a day. I personally see 8 to 10, but you have to see 30 patients a day. And so they will see maybe 5 minutes, 7 minutes with women. And so be your own advocate. As soon as the doctor comes in, says, say, choose like the three most important questions. I have three important questions that I need to ask you. Can I ask you them now or afterwards? And then if they try to hit the door, wait, the three questions. So, what would be three typical questions that you would have wanted answered? I don't know if that's fair to ask you that, but or that women
Yeah.
ask you that they want answers to. What would be those questions?
Yeah, I think like I have fatigue. That is something that I hear a lot from women. I'm really fatigued. I don't feel like it's normal. I don't feel like this is just
Mhm.
regular fatigue. I can't lose weight.
Oh,
I've tried. I'm healthy, but I can't lose the weight. And then I would say, like, for me personally, one of the things was like, I have this anxiety that I don't feel like it's kind of a newer thing. Like, I wasn't always like this. So those would be like the three for
yeah.
me.
So I would say fatigue is not a normal state. It can be normal a little bit following, having a baby, but it shouldn't persist too long. So checking the thyroid is very important. Looking at the adrenal hormones is critical. And then maybe putting some type of estrogen patch on. Now, I do use only bioidentical hormones. The estrogen patch is bioidentical, it's a pharmaceutical solution. And I like it for PMS and for postpartum because you just put it right there and it doesn't touch the baby. And I use creams, I use 5 different methods. But first of all, I would check those hormones, correct them. And because really, fatigue will be due to those hormones. Anxiety is generally due to low estrogen. So if anxiety increases right before the period, that's when the estrogen is lowest. So I would treat that part of your cycle with estrogen. Also, I would give adrenal support because when we
Mm.
start losing our adrenal hormones, we get really tired, Jess, and we can't lose weight. And the same symptoms in terms of weight. Well, we need to sleep. So I give a lot of people my sweet sleep or else melatonin, GABA, and 5-HTP if they want to go separately like that. I give a lot of women testosterone because testosterone builds muscles and causes confidence and a great sex drive. And if you don't have muscle mass, you're not going to lose weight. The metabolism is very low. So I want to bring the body back to a healthy, vibrant state. So I get women in an exercise program that's smart exercise for them. It's very individualized. Pilates is great for postpartum women or anybody because it's yoga is wonderful. HIIT, high intensive exercise, where you're just walking, and then for 30 seconds you sprint, and then you're walking and you sprint for 30 seconds. You do that 6 times, and that's tremendous for losing weight. Melatonin, like I said, it is sleep. 9 hours, 8 hours, 9 hours of sleep will really cause you to lose weight and to help with fatigue. So, just balance all the hormones to youthful levels, only using bioidentical hormones. Make sure that the thyroid is actually ideal. 40% of the time, the lab values are not going to show us in the traditional values that the thyroid is low. So I look at the T3, the free T3. I want that to be 3.1 or 3.2 at least. If it's not, I start with iodine. I give women iodine and try to selenium. You can get iodine drops, Crow's, Lugol's drops. You can get selenium in a capsule or 3 or 4 Brazil nuts a day. I also have iodine shield that I use a lot that I created, but really any way to get the iodine and a little more selenium in you will really help that T3 to rise. That's thyroid 3. That's the most potent thyroid hormone you have. And if it doesn't come up, I treat with low dose thyroid. I treat with a T3, thyroid 3, thyroid 4 preparation. And, women tell me, oh, I'm losing weight. Oh, I have energy. Oh, yeah, I feel pretty normal again. And that's what I want. Just
all the things that we want. Yes.
Yeah, come on. I'm a woman and I don't want to be overweight. And women come to me as an average of sort of being 30 pounds overweight, but sometimes it's 60. And no matter what the weight is, using all these strategies, emotional support, really going into past trauma, why we might have that extra shield around us. And I've personally done a fair amount of trauma work. I wasn't aware I had trauma until I started investigating it. It's like, I don't have trauma. It's like, Prudence, you had severe trauma from medical school and from sleeplessness and from broken hearts and from deaths in the family. And, we tend to say those things don't matter. And they do. They really matter, because trauma, when left unaddressed, can create future diseases. So when I think about prevention of heart disease and dementia and diabetes and, all of these diseases that we can prevent with bioidentical hormones, we got to bring the emotions into it. Some on a subconscious level, people feel like I don't deserve to live, or I'm not good enough. I did that for years, that I wasn't good enough, Jess. Just for years, where I thought, I'm not a good enough mom. I could be a better mom. And that's one reason I nursed so long, trying to be a better mom. But, we address the heart, the expression of the heart and the emotions. And that really leads to a deeper kind of connection to oneself and a deeper connection to the radiance that I see in all women. I see sometimes it's a little bit buried, but I see that radiance, in women and men too. I see it in men.
Yeah. That is so beautiful. I love that. I love all of your tips. It's so important. And I know every mom who's a good mom has had that thought of, am I doing good enough? Am I a good enough mom? I've had it many times. And if we're even thinking that way, I'm sure we're doing just fine. But I honestly, this has been so amazing. You have such a gift of helping women. And thank you for explaining how holistically and bringing it back to even the stress and the trauma that we have can manifest into a physical disease. It's so important that we treat everything. And again, your patients are so lucky to have you. You mentioned so many amazing supplements too, and I'll make sure to link all of this in my show notes as well.
Well, I'm delighted to do that. And Jess, thank you for having me on your site. I really appreciate it.
I loved it.
You're doing
I so appreciate it.
Job. A much better than good enough job. You're doing
Thank you. So I'll make sure to link all of your information for everyone to find you. And again, I'm so grateful that you were able to share with us.
Thank you, Jess. Thank you so much.
Thank you for listening to this week's episode. Please subscribe and review so we can reach more people who want to learn to glow alongside us. See you next time.